Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf Yomi, Maseches Avodah Zarah Daf Chav Gimel. We begin on top of the Amud. Ravina Amar Loikashia. This goes back to our apparent contradiction. You see, we had a Mishnah. Ein Ma'amidin, Behema, Bipundikois, Shaloi Dekechavim, one may not leave his animal under the care of the Goyish innkeeper. So basically, you can't trust the Goy with your animal. Why? The Mishnah explained, because there's concern that the Goy might be tempted to interact physically with the animal, which of course is a sin even for him, and poses a concern for us because we're in effect giving him that opportunity, and that falls under the umbrella of Lifnei Iver. The prohibition of Lifnei Iver, don't place a stumbling block in front of a blind man. Blind over here can refer to either physically blind or spiritually blind, passionately blind. So we don't trust the Goy with the animal. But the Brisa cited yesterday does allow a person to purchase a behemoth from a Goy and use it for a korban, although if that animal had indeed experienced this type of experience with a human, he would be puzzled. It would be disqualified for korban use. So how can you trust a Goyish animal supplier to supply you a korban animal? So the first approach taken yesterday was, although the Goy would not hesitate to interact physically with a Jewish animal, but his own animal, he wouldn't risk doing so lest it be detrimental to his animal. It can be harmful in terms of its reproductive abilities, etc. Ravina Amar, says the Gemara today, Ravina Amar Leikashi. Let me give you a very simple solution to this question. Sure, we're concerned. Lechatchila, before the fact, we say, look, don't trust the Goy with the animal, don't trip him up, don't tempt him. How do you have it? But after the fact, meaning to now go and buy an animal from a Goy, so unless we have confirmation that in fact the animal did have this experience, we have no firm basis to assume so, in which case you can take the animal and use it for a korban. So again, before the fact, to go ahead and trust the Goy with the animal, we don't do that, for concern that it might lead to a problem. But now today, that if in fact it happened, it would be after the fact. So we can't just assume it happened. In fact, we assume that chances are it did not. The animal is still kosher, and therefore you can use it for a korban. Now, how do we know that this type of distinction is valid? Who's to say the shani? There's a difference between the chatchila, between the diavad, between before the fact or after the fact. It's not. In fact, I'll prove it to you from a Mishnah. Our Mishnah. Like the Seachat Isha Imoy. Mishnah says a woman should not go into seclusion with a Goy for concern about Gilui Arayis, because they're suspected of Arayis. So we don't trust them. But then we have a Mishnah in Ksubais, which seems to say otherwise. We don't suspect something happened. When the Isha comes back from the Goyim, a woman who was taken captive, kidnapped by Goyim, is there a concern that perhaps she acquiesced to their company when she was under their care, in which case she would not be able to go back to her husband? Or it depends under what circumstances she was kidnapped. If it was because they had some sort of monetary claim on her family, on herself or her family. So since they're trying to recoup their money, they wouldn't risk damaging their goods, so to speak, in which case we assume she's pure, Muteris Labala, she can go back home to her husband. But if she was condemned to death, they have nothing to lose. Hasur Labala, concerned about the worst. So even if they release her, she can't go back home. So we see that although preferably a woman should not risk this type of company, right? She cannot be Mesiached with Goyim for concern about Gili Arayis. But look, in this case, she can go back home. Apparently, B'diavad, after it happened, we don't assume the worst unless we have confirmation. Apparently this proves our point. Shanilon, ben Chatchila L'diavad, there's a clear distinction between before and after. Well, says the Gemara, what do you mean? Who's to say that your inference is correct? Perhaps no, even after the fact, we have to assume the worst happened. Well, here it's very different. The reason why in the first scenario she's considered kosher and she can go back home. There's no concern that the guy was involved in foul play because he's concerned about losing his ability to collect his debt. So there's a special deterrent factor keeping him away. I'll even prove to you that that's the factor at play. The Tani Seifa. Because look at the same Mishnah. Part 2 of the Mishnah says, Al Yadena Fashes. She was kidnapped under more severe circumstances. She was condemned to death. In this case, we're concerned about foul play. Asur Labalish can't go back home. That proves our point. There's no more to say about this matter. So in any case, Ravina did make that distinction. So preferably, we should not avail ourselves, meaning the Isha should not be Mesiachad with a guy for concern about Avera. Right? And likewise, his focal point was the behema, sorry. So you shouldn't trust the guy with the behema for concern about revia, about mating with the animal, but after the fact, so to speak, meaning to go ahead and buy an animal from a guy, we don't have to necessarily assume something happened to the animal, in which case the animal now is considered kosher. Rabbi Padas Amar, here comes yet a third approach to resolving this apparent contradiction between the Mishnah, which says we don't trust the guy with an animal, versus the Brisa, which says you can buy an animal for a carbon from a guy. Well, he says it's a difference of opinion. Rabbi Lezer is the one who says we are chayshish for revia, for the guy having interacted with the animal, whereas the Rabbanon say, although we suspect, but not to the point of criticality to actually invalidate the animal. Rabbi B'das Amar Lekasha, the answer is like this: Ha Rabbi Eliezer, our Mishnah which says you can't trust the guy, that's Rabbi Eliezer. Ha Rabbanon, the Brisa which says you can purchase from a guy, that's the Rabbanon speaking this now. Where do we find this machlekes? By the way, in fact, Tosfos back in the Mishnah says that nowadays we do place our animals under the guy's care, and he says because we're going like the Rabbanon, that's the Rabbim, the multitude, the Rabbim. We pass like the Rabbim that we're not chayshish for revia. So where do we find this machlekes? It's not. We have a machlekes by a para aduma. Okay, gabe paras chatas. Rabbi Lezer Omer eino nikachas minoid gecham. One may not purchase a red heifer from a guy to be used for para aduma. V'chacham ematir. Chacham say you could. We're not concerned that the animal was tainted. Oh, my labaka mithli. Apparently, the machlekes revolves around this point, right? The Lezer Savar, he holds chashina. We are very concerned about luravia, and therefore the animal is deemed to be pasul. Rabbanan Savri lechashin luravia. Rabbanan say no, we're not concerned. There you go, two opinions. So, in fact, our Mishnah, which says don't trust the guy with an animal, is Rabbi Lezer, versus the Brisa, which says you can purchase from a guy for carbon use, is the Rabbanan. How do you know that's the correct interpretation of this machlekes? Perhaps both opinions would not suspect a guy of mating with an animal. The reason why Rabbi Lezer says don't purchase a para aduma from a guy, that's for a totally different reason, which is unique and exclusive to para aduma. We all know that a para aduma is a very delicate entity, right? Even if it's just carrying a little of a load, it's already disqualified. So perhaps the guy loaded him up. He uda shall sack it. Even if the owner places a little bundle of empty sacks on the para aduma, pasla, that's it. Disqualify the animal. Ube as opposed to an egla rufa, which is the other type of, that's the calf that's brought when a victim is found on the road. So there, it only becomes disqualified if it actually was used to pull a load, to pull a yoke. Okay, in any case, since the paraduma is so delicate and so sensitive, Mar Savar Chashinan, Rabbi Lezer says, look, you never know, he may have disqualified his own animal by putting something on it, so you can't take your risk. Umar Savar Chashinan, Rabbi say, we're not concerned, he knows better than doing that. Says the Gemara, no, you can't suggest that Rabbi Lezer's concern is solely because of the chance that he may have loaded up the animal. You can't say that. Because why would the guy in his right mind jeopardize such an expensive item, such a great potential for profit? Right? It's a gold mine, paraduma. For this little, service that the parah will do for him, carry his load. Why would he jeopardize such a large profit for nicha purta, for a small benefit? Nicha purta, on account of a small benefit, he wouldn't risk such a great loss. So you can't say that's where Rebbe Elazar's concern. Right? Unlikely that he would have done that to the animal. So in fact, why? So why doesn't Rebbe Elazar allow us to buy a paraduma from a guy? Oh, apparently, as per Rabbi Padas, who said that according to Rebbe Elazar, we're concerned about Ravia, about the guy having made of the animal, which disqualifies it halachically. Well, says the Gemara, well, there too, why would he risk that? Hachanami here as well. Lema, we can say Mishmano to Purta for that minor personal benefit of interacting with the animal. Lemafsa too, but he wouldn't lose all this money. So why is that concern any more real than the load issue? Well, big difference. Hasam Yitzrei Taikfai. Regarding mating, he's drawn by his desires, which, as we explained before, can blind, very blinding. In which case, that poses a concern. Okay, so let's assume the pshat is like Rabbi Padas suggested. And in fact, that's the point of machlekes between Rebbe Elazar and the Rabbanan. Rebbe Elazar says chayshina nuravia. There's a very real concern that a guy may have interacted with the animal. That's why we can't trust the guy with an animal. That's why we can't buy a carbon from a guy. That's why we can't buy a paraduma from a guy. Whereas Rabbanan sort of discount that concern. Well, says the Gemara, who's to say that's the correct approach? B'dilma, the kuli alma, lechashin and l'ravia, perhaps nobody. Even Rebbe Elazar is not really concerned about ravia to this extent of disqualifying the carbon. You know why Rebbe Elazar doesn't allow the paraduma to be purchased from a guy? V'achanu taima, the Rebbe Elazar, k'tani Shila, as Shila had taught. The Tani Shila, my time in the Rebbe Elazar. You know why, according to Rebbe Elazar, a paraduma cannot be purchased from a guy? It's a pasuk. Daber b'nei Yisrael, right? At the beginning of Pashas Chukas, speak to b'nei Yisrael. V'yikchu elecha b'nei Yisrael, right? It says, yikchu elecha paraduma, tamima, she'en b'mum, etc., etc. So he had a tradition of Masorah to elaborate on this pasuk as follows. Maybe it's the choice of words, the fact that it said v'yikchu elecha instead of v'yitnu elecha. So Rashi learns that yikchu can mean purchase, it can mean sell, like v'yakichu. V'yikchu elecha b'nei Yisrael. Sorry, v'yikchu elecha. We learn from there b'nei Yisrael yikchu. So b'nei Yisrael yikchu tells you that only b'nei Yisrael yikchu. As Rashi explains, kari v'yakichu. We learn it as though it says v'yakichu. They can sell it to you. You can only supply yourself from a Yiddish animal dealer. B'nei Yisrael yikchu ve'ein ha'edik chav mikchu. But you can't allow a guy to supply you with the paraduma. So again, perhaps it's a very specific requirement, exclusive to paraduma, unrelated to the chashash of Ravia, and unrelated to our discussion. Says the Gemara, no, you can't suggest that. Lo yisaka daita, the Tani Sefer, because take a look. At the end of that, the Mishnah in Parah over there, the end, the second part of the Mishnah that we had begun learning before, right? We had started with the Paras Chatas, right? Rebbe Elazar Omer, right? So that was the beginning of the Mishnah. Here comes this next part of the Mishnah, that the same exact machlekes applies to any animal for any carbon. So we see it's not exclusive to paraduma based on this pasuk. Let's look at that. Look at the second part of that Mishnah. V'chein hayir Rebbe Elazar paisel b'chol karbanos kulan. Rebbe Elazar applied the same principle to all karbanos. You can't use a carbon You can't use a behema bought from a guy. Now, if the reason for all this is because of Shila's pasuk, okay, so that's a good explanation of paraduma. Sure, we have the lashon kicha paraduma only from a yid. Elakulu karbanis kicha ksibu, but since when do we have kicha by other karbanis? So clearly, the same exact machlekes applies to other karbanis, and the only way to explain the machlekes, according to Rabbi Das, is whether or not we're chayshish for revia. Avodah says we can't trust the guy with an animal, so you can't place your animal under his care, as per the Mishnah Bayas. You can't purchase a behema from a guy to use for a carbon, and certainly for a paraduma, because we have the additional factor as well of bnei Yisrael v'yichum. Says the Gemara v'dilma. Okay, v'dilma ad kan le'pligi Rabbanan Rabbi Lezer ella v'para. So you're telling me according to Rabbi Lezer we're chayshish for revia, but according to Rabbanan we're not chayshish for revia ever. Who says? Perhaps, in principle, Rabbanan agree we're chayshish for revia. How come they allow us to purchase paraduma from a guy? Perhaps it's only there because the guy is smarter than that. Smarter than risking this great profit that you can earn on this paraduma. Ela b'para the domei yikar, it's a very expensive item. So over there he overcomes his desire, he abstains from the animal. Aval b'shar karbanes. But regarding buying an animal for another carbon, from a guy, perhaps his stakes aren't so high, and he would risk it. Perhaps they would agree to Rabbi Lezer that we can't trust a guy. Perhaps the animal he's selling us was tainted. Says the Gemara, but you can't say it. You can't say that because remember we had that brisa yesterday that allows us to purchase a behema from a guy and use it for a carbon. Apparently there is some opinion, there's some shita which allows it and doesn't suspect the guy of wrongdoing. Well, Sani, what about that brisa which says loichim behema, man behema l'carbon, you can buy a behema for a carbon from a guy. Mani, who's speaking in that brisa? If you're telling me that elsewhere, other than paraduma, elsewhere everybody is concerned about tainted animals, so Mani, who's speaking in that brisa? Loy Rabbi Lezer, Loy Rabbanan, it's not Rabbi Lezer or Rabbanan. It's got to be somebody, right? So there must be an opposing view, i.e. the Rabbanan, who are not concerned about revia. Furthermore, we have a brisa which clearly articulates the opposing view. What did Rabbi Lezer's colleagues, how did they respond to his position? His position was that you can't trust a guy with an animal. The animals he has is tainted. They responded with a pasuk. Look, in the days to come, called tzon keder, yikab tzolach, yalor tzal mizbechi. The goyim will bring the animals. The Ishmaelim will use them for karbanis. Apparently, we're not concerned about them being tainted. So clearly, we see that there's an opposing view to Rabbi Lezer, which is the Chachamim, who allow a behemoth to be purchased from goyim without concern of tainting. Okay, so let's just summarize this piece. Starting point was the Mishnah, which says you can't trust a guy with an animal. We're concerned about revia, whereas the Brisa says buy a carbon, buy a behemoth for a carbon from a guy. So the first approach yesterday was, well, his own animal he wouldn't meddle with, as opposed to an animal placed under his care by a yid. Ravina today says, well, l'chatchila, don't risk it, but b'diavad, we don't have to fear the worst. Rabbi Tas says, well, Rabbi Lezer is chayshish, Rabbanan not chayshish. Now, ad kan lepligi, ela b'chashash. So up until this point, right, what we're saying is that the machlokes is regarding chashash. Rabbi Lezer says, we're chayshish. Rabbanan says, we're not chayshish. But all agree, avalahecha, devade rava, but a paraduma which was certainly tainted with, certainly meddled with, would be possible. The experience would disqualify the paraduma from being used. And the question is why? We all know that a paraduma is not really a standard korban. It's not placed on a mizbeach, right? It's brought to the Haramishcha next door to Yerushalayim, where it's shechted, where it's burnt. So why would Revia disqualify paraduma? Shmamina, perhaps we can deduce from here the para kachim mizbeachi, that in fact paraduma has a status of a regular korban that is placed on the mizbeach and has the same standards and the same requirements and becomes possible through Revia. Because otherwise, the kachim bedek habayis, because if it's not considered kachim mizbeach, rather it's just kachim bedek habayis, it's meaning it's owned, it's a possession of Hegdish. Why would this experience disqualify the paraduma? Even a block of wood can be kachim bedek habayis. There are no halachic standards to conform to. Well, it says the one shani para de chatas kai rachmana. True, paraduma is really kachim bedek habayis, but we know the Torah refers to it as a chatas. Pasuk says, "V'asav ishtar es efer hapara," right? Mishmeres lemenida chatasi. The fact that the Torah gives it a label chatas, says Rashi, that doesn't allow us. Doesn't allow us to use something which was tainted in this manner. Sanya milsa, it's inappropriate. So there are some standards that we have to conform to. Technically, it's not really a kachim mizbech; it's kachim bedek habayis, but Revia would disqualify it. Asks the Gemara, okay, so then it has to fit, has to conform to standard korban standards. What about a paraduma born in an abnormal, unnatural way? It was cesarean. An animal born in this way is not to be used for a korban. So would the same apply to paraduma? Perhaps you'll say, yeah, sure. Alamatanya, we have a brayso. According to Reb Shimon, it's okay, even if it's Yotze Daifen. Hikdish be Yotze Daifen, psula. If you magdish paraduma as a Yotze Daifen, it's possible, just like any other korban. But Reb Shimon machshir, he says it's okay. Why? Oh, so perhaps Reb Shimon has his own unique opinion regarding Yotze Daifen. He considers it like a regular natural birth regarding whether a mother of a human born this way is considered like a yeledes with all the halachos of a yeledes. The Amar, he says, a child born in this fashion is considered regular birth, like a regular birth. So likewise, by the para aduma. Well, that's untrue. Even Reb Shimon would agree that it's not considered a conventional birth regarding an animal for korban. Right? So we can't say it's Reb Shimon on his track, the Amar, Yotze Daifen Ad Ma'alyu, but Rabbi Yochanan tells us, explains to us, Reb Shimon certainly agrees that a korban brought in this, an animal brought in this way is not kaddish. So how could you use a paraduma if it was born Yotze Daifen? You're right, says the Gemara. Let's go back to square one. Really, a paraduma is kachim bedek habayis. I asked you a question. So why is it affected by Revia? The answer is just like the paraduma cannot be physically blemished, it can't be spiritually blemished either. What greater blemish than having this experience with a human? Ella, shani, para, rather paraduma is different. Hoil umum paisaba, since a physical blemish disqualifies it. Pasuk calls it tamima, right? It has to be whole and complete. Dvar erva, Avodah Zarah nami paisaba. Arayis, Avodah Zarah. Right? If it was set aside or worship, would also be a disqualifying factor. L'chsiv, ki mashchasam b'hem bumbam. How do we know that Arayis, Avodah Zarah are on the same plane, so to speak, as a physical blemish? Because we have a pasuk in reference to the blemishes of karbonis in general. The pasuk uses a term, mashchasam bam. Mashchasam is like destruction, right? Hashchasam. So the Torah equates a mum to hashchasam. V'tana Rabbi Shmuel, that the term mashchasam, hashchasa, has very specific connotations to it. Kol malkim shenemar hashchasa. Look around the Torah. Whenever you find the term hashchasa, ein ela typically it refers to only two things. Arayis, Avodah Zarah. Ein ela dvar erva, Avodah Zarah. Dvar erva d'chsiv ki yishchas kabasas darka la'aretz. So by the Mabul, Hishchis refers to arayis. And likewise, Avodah Zarah l'chsiv pen tashchisun. So we have tashchisun, and then we have Avodah Zarah v'sisin lochem pesach. So back to the parah duma, v'hapara, here our parah, nami as well, hoy lumun paisal ba, since a physical blemish disqualifies it, dvar erva, likewise, these type of experiences, dvar erva, v'etzkechavim pasli ba, and that's the end of the story. So again, it's just a question of whether it happened. Rabbi Lezer says, don't worry, do worry, Chacham say, don't worry, but certainly, if it did have that experience, it would make it possible. Good, let's go back to Tani Shila, who said, my time to Rabbi Lezer. Why, according to Rabbi Lezer, is there a specific psul with respect to buying a paraduma from a guy? So, as we explained, and we're going to explain tomorrow, this is in addition to the concern of erva, of arayis, but there's another qualification, which is it has to be Jewish supplied by a yid. My time to Rabbi Lezer, d'chsiv, davar b'nei Yisrael, v'yikchu. And we learn, b'nei Yisrael, yikchu, ve'ein, ha'oiv de'kachav mikchu, it has to be supplied by a yid only. Asks the Gemara, El mi'ata, if you're going to learn the pasuk this way, what about the pasuk in Parshas Truma? Coming up soon, right? Davar b'nei Yisrael, v'yikchu li truma. So, do you mean to say only a Yisrael can supply material for the Mishkan, the gold, the silver, etc.? Chanami, here as well, the Bnei Yisrael Yichu, only a Yid could supply these materials, but not a Goy, Veined Kacham Yichu? Perhaps you'll say, sure, correct. But that's incorrect. Because look at this story, a famous story, Vamar Yidam Shmuel, Shalosh Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Lezer was once asked, what are the limits of Kibud Avim? How far must a person go in adherence of this great mitzvah? Ad Heichon Kibud Avim. Amram, he says, I'll give you an example. A real life example. Tzuru, go take a look at the way a guy observed this mitzvah. This mitzvah is incumbent upon goyim as well, right? They learn from Esav. This is a mitzvah sichlis. It's a rational mitzvah, and even a guy adheres to it. Take a look at what a certain guy did in honor and respect of his father in Ashkelon. And what was his name? V'dama ben Nasina Shemoy, that was his name. Pamachat. So happens that one time, Bikshu mimeno avanim le'ephod. The Chachamim were missing one of the shoulder stones for the ephod. Very expensive proposition. Meshishim ribu schar. He could have made 60 times 10, 600,000 dinar on this deal. Rav Kana Masni, he says it was really 80,000. Shmoinim ribu, 800,000. And the customers came to buy it from him. The problem is, the keys to the safe were under his sleeping father's shoulders. He didn't want to wake him up. The keys were lying under his father's shoulders. And he didn't want to wake him up. He didn't want to bother him. Apparently, it was going to profit the son only, because otherwise, if the father was in the business, this would have caused them more distress. Apparently, he took the loss upon himself, the son did, never telling his father, for fear of waking him up. Look how far he went to be Mekayim Kibbud Avayim. But in any case, why were they coming to a guy for the Avnei Shayam, for the stones for the ephod, if it has to be supplied by a Yid only? Answers the Gemara, that's an exception. Avnei Shayam, look at the pasuk. It says Avnei Shayam without a vav. So it doesn't connect back to the beginning where it says V'yichul Yisruma. Avnei Shayim, Hipsek Inin. It's a new section, so to speak, and this can be supplied by a guy. Vav Avnei Miluim Ksiv. Hadar Arvi, but afterwards it says Ve'avnei Shayim Ve'avnei Miluim. So the vav in front of Ve'avnei seems to reconnect everything back to the beginning of the discussion of Yichuli Truma, that only it can be the supplier. So that would cover Avnei Shayim as well. So how can you supply yourself from a guy? Va'oid. Further, Moktani say, but take a look at the next part of that brisa, that in fact they came to buy, guess what? Next year they came to buy paraduma from him, and that according to you is certainly out of the question. Tani Sev Lashon Abba. Guess what happened the next year? No delay paraduma, be'adroi. Malatav, he finds a red calf in his herd, perfectly red. Just the right time for the paraduma to be processed, and they came to buy it from him. Nichnasu Chachmi Yisrael Etzla, they came into him to purchase to make a deal. Amram, he says, look, I know I can charge heaven and earth. I have the prime item here. but I'm going to be fair with you. I know about you. I ask you for any amount, any price that I state, you will pay. But still, I'm going to be fair. Now, I'm only going to ask you to pay me the amount of money that I lost. See how he refers to it as a loss. Last year when I had to do that mitzvah, I lost money on the deal. I want to get that back. I want to be compensated for that loss. So he had to keep it the but he felt it as a loss. He didn't feel like he gained. He felt he lost. Interesting choice of words. I want that money back. The money that I lost on account of my father's shvil apple. But in any case, they're buying a paraduma from a guy. Says the Gemara. Hasam Aide Tagari Yisrael Zavon. They had a middleman involved who would buy it from Dama ben Nasina and turn around and sell it to the Beis Hamikdash. So since ultimately it was supplied by Yid, that's okay. That addresses that concern. So again, according to Shila, the concern is that the paraduma has to be purchased from a Yid. So you can't buy it directly from a guy, but through a Jewish middleman, that's okay. Asks the Gemara, so you mean that's the only concern for Rabbi Lezer? Rabbi Lezer l'chayish l'reviyah? So we're saying that according to Rabbi Lezer, concern is only about who's supplying it, but we're not concerned about the guy having made it with the animal? Is that what you're trying to tell me? But Tanya. Listen to this brisa, where it seems that even Rabbi Lezer is concerned about reviyah as well. So both concerns are there. Amr le Rabbi Lezer. So when Rabbi Lezer said that you can't really buy the paraduma from a guy, right? Initially that's what he said. So they said, what do you mean? The response was, Mas. In fact, it was a story. Remember, they bought it from that guy, Vidama, right? Vidama Shmoy, that was his name. Some say Remetz, that was his name, Shmoy. Apparently it's okay to buy from a guy. Amr le Rabbi Lezer. So Rabbi Lezer responded, well, Misham Raya, how can you prove from that story? They had full surveillance from the moment of birth. They had guards watching it. Yisrael Misham Ranoisa. They were Yidden watching the animal. Mishah Shenolda, from the moment of birth. So that's why they allowed themselves to buy it from the guy. Bottom line is, what does Rabbi Lezer respond? What concern is he responding to? Apparently there's a concern beyond the previous concern of a Jewish supplier. He's speaking about a concern about the animal having been tainted by interacting with a guy, and that's why he responded by saying, well, there was surveillance from day one. So clearly, Rabbi Lezer was also concerned about reviyah, about foul play on account of the guy. Said, well, you're right. Both concerns are true. Rabbi Lezer Tarti Isli had both concerns. Kicha, that has to be supplied by Yid, and to get around that, they employed a middleman, a Yiddish middleman, and also, of course, he's concerned about reviyah as well, as we had explained earlier. And that was solved by having surveillance on site from the moment of birth. Okay, let's do a quick chazar of today's daf. Trigger point, of course, was that seeming contradiction. Our Mishnah says you can't trust a guy with an animal. The other brisa says, sure, you can feel free to buy an animal from a guy and use it for a carbon. Ravina says, well, lechatchila, don't trust the guy, but the Eved, it's deemed to be kosher. According to Rabbi Pedas, well, it's machlekes Tanaim. Rabbi Lezer says, chayshini on the reviyah, and therefore you can't purchase a behemah from a guy to be used for a carbon. Certainly not a paraduma, because there we have a compounded concern. Aside from reviyah, we have the pasuk requirement, Torah requirement, which is buy only from a yid, which applies to paraduma, which applies to supplies for the mishkan as well. Whereas the Rabbanan are not concerned. In fact, they allowed the paraduma to be purchased from Dama ben Nasina. And likewise, you can purchase a behemah from a guy and use it for a carbon. Now, all agree that if, in fact, the para was tainted by a guy, it would be possible. The question is why? If para is merely kedushas bedek habayis, so it's like any other hegdish possession, like a stone, like a stick, like a lago. Why would this disqualify? And the answer is, just as a mum, a physical blemish, affects the paraduma, likewise, all these spiritual taintings, Avodah Zarah, and arayos. All the best, and atzlach harab.